Hey guys, so today we're going to be discussing something a little bit more serious. I'm going to be reacting to a video by Loyal Moses, and he's actually talking about not just the 3D printer ban, because it's way more involved than that. He's going to be talking about more of the minutia involved with this 3D printer ban. And honestly, it's not just a 3D printer ban. This is just the start of the ball rolling down a hill, because once it starts going, it's very hard to stop. Anyway, let's get on with the video and let's see about what Loyal Moses has to say.
Welcome to the studio. The last video was the warning. This video is the reality check. In the last 48 hours, the response has been massive. I've seen thousands of comments from you. I also saw the breakdown from William Kirk over at Washington Gun Law. He highlighted my recent video and X posts and asked for me to reach out to discuss this technical side of this bill. William, consider it done. I'll be contacting you. And I'm sure we're going to have a very enlightening conversation.
So before we go any further into this video, first things first, we're going to give it a like, and we're going to hit the subscribe button, right? I mean, you can practice first, go down below, hit the subscribe button below, and then go to his channel and give him a subscribe. Loyal Moses, it's all linked below. Anyway, let's carry on.
About this technology, and I will share all of that with you here. But right now, looking at the reaction to this bill, I think many of you are missing a larger point, and that's really the reason for this video. This bill isn't just about 3D printed firearms, and there seems to be a lot of confusion about that. That is the Trojan horse. The language in Washington House Bill 2321 is focused heavily on manufacturers. It requires aggressive blocking technology, and it requires a database of prohibited files. Right now, that database might be focused on firearm components. But who manages that database? The Washington State Attorney General.
So it's basically putting a whole lot of power into one person. Granted, yes, you've got the president, but I mean, he's got the House and Congress to keep him in check. This is one person. Who's going to keep him in check? It's not going to be the people, because we're not going to get much choice. If this gets passed, pretty much what he says, or I should say what the Attorney General says, goes. It's going to be that database.
Who decides what gets added to that database next year? The Attorney General. Once that infrastructure is built, once your printer has a direct line to a state-run list of banned shapes, do you honestly think that they're going to stop at firearms? This brings me to the scariest part. This is the perfect framework for copyright enforcement. Yep. Today, it's a Glock frame, 100%. Which many of you might not even care about. But tomorrow, that database updates, and suddenly your printer refuses to print a Star Wars helmet because Disney flagged it.
Okay, let's take into something else. Okay, so Disney, whatever. What about Briggs and Stratton? What about them? What if they decide, hey, you know what? We're not going to manufacture this 3D vein valve anymore. You know, this one here. Give me one sec. Let's say this guy. I'm sure a lot of you know what this is. What if Briggs and Stratton decided that they were going to stop making this? What if they said, you know what? We're not going to make this anymore. And we're going to make it so no one else can make it. And we're going to enforce this law. We're going to make sure that we're going to, quote unquote, lobby, i.e. grease the palms of the politician, to protect our intellectual property, or our IP. And this happens to be it. This is part of their intellectual property, right? So we take this item in particular, and we make it so that you can't print it. Not only that, you also have to buy it from us, Briggs and Stratton. But they decided that they're not going to put it into production anymore. In fact, let's say they just stop production, and not only do they stop production, but they make it so that you can't print it. Now what do? That part breaks because it's plastic. It's going to happen. You go to service it and you accidentally break the little clip where it goes, let's say you break this part right here. You break this spot. You know where that part is. That controls the throttle. If that part breaks, you can't use this, right? I had that problem. I had that part break. It snapped off. actually right here, this small section here, broke right off. What am I going to do? I got to get another one of those, or I have to strip it from another engine, or I could use nylon or polycarbonate or something like that, and I could print one, and then I don't have to worry about going out and buying one. I've got a 3D printer. I could just print it, and there, problem solved. But Briggs and Stratton says, no. That's protected. That's our property. You can't print that. You have to buy it through us. Okay, how much is it? Oh, sorry, we don't manufacture that anymore. Now what? Anyway, let's carry on.
Next week, you can't print a replacement part for your truck or tractor because Ford and John Deere claim it violates their IP. They are building an architecture of censorship right inside your home, and they're selling it to you as public safety. There is a dangerous idea floating around in the comments of my previous video that pre-ban machines are safe. You think that because you own a 3D printer today that you are grandfathered in forever. But you're wrong. They aren't going to allow a million unregulated manufacturing factories to exist in basements across Washington and New York. History shows us exactly how this plays out. They start with the sale. They stop the flow of new devices. Then they work backward. They will use safety to force mandatory firmware upgrades, or they will simply pass a new law that says possession of a non-compliant device after a certain date is a felony. We have seen this with firearms and firearms accessories. People bought items that were 100% legal.
Here's another really scary thought. Let's say I have a Volkswagen, an old TDI Volkswagen, and and this isn't just like Jettas and Golfs. I mean, you could get a Touareg with the diesel engine, and let's just say you get the wonderful P2015 error, which if anyone has a Volkswagen, they'll know what this error is, especially if it's a diesel. It's got to do with the intake manifold. Take a look at this part. This is a copy from Diesel Geek, and it's a 3D print. You could also use this same 3D print to make your own from a CNC machine. But let's say Volkswagen says that this is modifying their property and that they deem it illegal. And so they disallow you from being able to make that part. So the CNC machines that are making this for Diesel Geek, all of a sudden, he can't make this thing anymore because his machines have to connect to this Attorney General's database from the government, and it says, oh, sorry, that IP is protected by Volkswagen. You can't print that. So now he can't make that part. You can't print that part. And so you're stuck buying this $2,000 or whatever cost part from Volkswagen because that's the only way you can get that part. They don't service this. This is an add-on. The whole problem with this was there's a solenoid valve with a little actuator arm, and the arm's got an internal stop, but that internal stop fails. So instead of it sitting at 0, it goes down too far, and now you're sitting at like minus 12, whatever the case may be. It's below 0. So it's outside of its operating parameters, so it throws a code, P2015. This bracket, either machine milled, such as the one you get from Diesel Geek, or if you printed it yourself, it's machined in such a way that it takes that arm and it sets it at 0, and the next it's an external stop. This is a proper fix. This is the fix that Volkswagen should have made, but they didn't. So they could actually make it so that they make this fix, but they are the only ones that can sell it. And instead of $99 from Diesel Geek, now you're forced to buy it from Volkswagen, and they're charging, say, $3.99, $4.99, $5.99 for something that you could have printed. This is a really slippery slope, guys. This is a really slippery slope. Now, this doesn't give these manufacturers direct power to do it, but it puts the framework in place. Let's get back on with the video.
They own them for years. Then a ruling changes, And overnight, without doing anything wrong, these owners became criminals. Your 2-year-old printer that doesn't have this government spyware installed, it will be deemed a public safety threat. Now, some of you are thinking, that's fine.
Yeah, I've got an Ender 5. It's all done offline. It's all done with these. Not particular these, but micro SDs. I just put it in my computer, put the file on it after I've used my slicer, take it over to the printer, tell it to print, and poof, out it prints. Stuff like this. This is to hold cutoff wheels. Although, yeah, I think it means the smaller cutoff wheels, because this one is a little small. I mean, this is a standard 4.5 inch and doesn't fit. I'm gonna have to either blow this one up or design my own for these.
I'll just fly under the radar. I'll keep my old printer and I'll just stay quiet. Well, that works for most people. But we're moving into an era where privacy is basically dead. Here's a quick story. I live on a rural ranch, and during the height of the lockdowns, I took my oldest son out for a driving lesson with our truck and trailer. We were in the middle of nowhere. I mean, probably population 3, out there on some rural road. Later that week,
I noticed the tractor he has in the background. It's a John Deere, the king of proprietary parts and protecting their IP.
I got a call from a friend of mine in law enforcement. He told me someone had called and reported me to the state for violating the stay-at-home mandate. Now, we laughed about it because it was absurd and nothing came of it. They weren't enforcing it anyway, but it taught me a valuable lesson. If you post a picture of your printer online, if you share a photo of a print, you are one phone call away from a concerned citizen reporting you to the state.
Do you imagine that? Could you imagine? You print something. Let's say it's not a gun. Let's say it's something like this. What about this? What about that? Do you think they'd allow that to be printed? That's actually a copy of, well, it's supposed to be a better copy of a Lego gun. That's it. It's an M16 Lego gun. That's all it is. It allows you to 3D print a Lego gun. Here's another one. And look at that. It's got a scope. Oh boy. Imagine this getting blocked. Just plastic toys. There's nothing special about it, but it gets flagged because it says, oh, that's a gun. Or, oh, that is protected intellectual property. You can't print that. And imagine how far this can go with, let's say, someone's trying to restore a 65 Corvette. And the part they want, well, it's not made anymore. And they can't find it anywhere. So they think, okay, you know what? I'll just 3D print it. So they get everything, they go to 3D print it, and their machine says, nope, sorry, that's Chevrolet property. You can't print that. It's protected. But it hasn't been made for the past 30 years. What are you supposed to do in that situation? You can't make it. You can't print it. You try to make it on, let's say you want to make a bracket for the engine. And so you have your CNC machine and you're like, okay, I'll just mill it out of a piece of steel or aluminum. So you go to do it and the machine says, no, sorry, that's intellectual property owned by whoever. You can't print that. This is the framework that sets this into place to allow manufacturers to do stuff like this through lobbying. And we all know lobbying, all that means is paying politicians. Let's carry on with the video.
Citizen reporting you to the state. If possessing a non-compliant printer becomes illegal, you are trusting your freedom to the silence of your neighbors. So ultimately, what this means, if a law like this passes, you can't rely on having an older machine or older existing hardware to be safe. You will be likely forced into the new hardware. Now, a couple of years ago, I asked my community if they ever thought government would require licenses for machine shops. Overwhelmingly, they all said no, that was a conspiracy theory.
I was literally just saying this. That getting into this is nuts.
But things look a little bit different now, don't they? This bill includes subtractive manufacturing. It specifically speaks of CNC machines or any machine that is controlled by code that removes material from an object. It then includes a section that exempts your machines, including 3D printers, if you have a federal firearms license.
Oh,
This
so you have to have
is a
firearms
full-on
license.
press on manufacturing and machine shops, not just our 3D printers. They are destroying at-home manufacturing by requiring all of these machines to comply with a ridiculous level of complexity or be licensed. Your at-home Carburetor CNC machine, it will be illegal unless it connects to the same blacklist system as your 3D printers.
That's crazy. That is actually crazy. That's going to really hurt a lot of the repair community. Stuff like this, like for some I can't even get into how bad this is. I mean, I'm Canadian, but here's the thing. This passes in the US. Look at Canada. Our prime minister is sorry about that, guys. I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. I started to talk about the prime minister and how much of a POS he is. Just yeah. We'll carry on with the video. How about that?
The state wants all machine shops to be licensed or illegal. There's no longer a hobby or small business middle ground. So I have a question for you. Something to think about. Since the legislation is so broad and far-reaching, could hobby 3D printers come to an end? Will this all end with 3D printers existing only in licensed 3D print farms? And if so, would you license, go get an FFL to have your 3D printers in your farm? Let me know in the comments. Now,
Whoa. Did I just hear that correct? You have to have a firearms license just to get a 3D printer. That's almost the way this legislation is being written, that you need to have a firearms license to have a 3D printer that can print offline? What? Do they not realize that the most regulated parts of the gun are the barrel and the firing pin? Without those two things, you can't really have a gun. Because a 3D printer, if you print a 3D printed barrel, there's no plastic on earth that is strong enough to withstand the pressures involved that will come out of an extruder like a 3D printer. At least not the ones that I work with, or the ones that the average consumer works with, like up to, as far as I'm concerned, like a $3,500 Prusa. But they're not going to have that kind of build quality with a plastic barrel. This is insane levels of government. Like, this is serious government overreach.
Now, let's look at the companies in 3D printing. Bamboo Lab, Prusa, Creality, and so many more. Do you think that they're going to manufacture a special Washington State edition printer and a different one for the rest of the country? No, absolutely not. This would be a logistical nightmare. The pressure from these states, Washington, New York, California, is immense. If these markets demand spyware, it is cheaper and safer for these companies to roll out software to everyone. Now, we've already seen FlashForge capitulate on similar issues, right? You all saw the email and the social media posts where they were way ahead of this type of legislation, basically saying, hey, don't print these things on your printer.
What constitutes a weapon, though? I mean, seriously, what constitutes a weapon? I don't understand this. What exactly does it, like it says, the printing of firearms or weapons components. So does that mean that if you have a 3D printed knife, that you decide, oh, I'm going to print this and use it as, say, a letter opener? You want to make like a mini katana used as a letter opener, just as a gag. Or like some kind of, I don't know, a Warhammer 30K weapon. You thought, okay, I'll make this, but it's going to be, say, just, I don't know, a letter opener. But it looks like a weapon. because it's designed as a weapon, but you're using it as a letter opener or a box cutter or any number of things that you could possibly be using this. What constitutes a weapon? I mean, a firearm? Firearm is very specific. You know, like it sends a projectile down a precision milled barrel to a very precise target. That's a firearm in a nutshell, right? Like, and it's using, first it was using black powder, and then it was using what, cordite now. So we use cordite, and it's using a blasting cap. Blasting caps are also, they're pretty regulated, if I remember correct. But you still have to buy the ammunition for the thing. So even if you printed a gun, you still have to buy the ammunition, and the amount of pressure is built up by ammunition inside that barrel are immense. I have more of a feeling that it'll just blow out the back of the darn thing because they're built in layers. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's all sorts of little lines all around this thing. And all these are just different layers because that's how a printer prints. It just comes in around and around and around and just print one layer at a time. And as it goes, with mine, the bed slowly goes down. Print head stays in place. And it slowly goes down. Where there's other ones where the print head, it goes up instead. So it's all the same. It's still adding layer upon layer upon layer. It doesn't matter how you make this. There will always be a weak side. Whether it's this side, right? Because the lines go like this, or it'll be this side. It all depends on how you make it. But it's still additive printing, and this isn't solid. This is actually porous material. So those pressures, one way or another, they're going to destroy the plastic. I don't know. I don't know if there's actual filament that would be strong enough. Even carbon fiber reinforced filament, I don't think, would be strong enough to be able to withstand the pressures of a bullet from a firearm.
Or we're going to report you. So quite a bit of overreach there. If this passes, Bamboo isn't going to fight for your rights. They're going to calculate the liability, and they will likely decide that it's easier to install the handshake code for everyone than to risk losing access to the US market, which is the largest market in 3D printing. And don't think that you can just use an old slicer with a new printer. This bill implies a handshake. The software must authenticate the hardware. If your slicer doesn't have the government update, the printer won't print. Understand this. The smaller 3D printer companies, Artillery, Sovol, Cheedy, they don't have the capital to develop and comply with this blacklist system. This is truly catastrophic for our industry if this bill passes. I see the comments from the Voron crowd. I build kits. I'm safe. They can't ban parts. You are underestimating how aggressive a state can be. There is a little thing called spirit of the law. And if a company ships you a box of parts that is intended to become a non-compliant printer, they would be liable. I know this because I've lived it. I was once on the receiving end of a lawsuit from a state government. They sued me for, let's just say, tens of millions of dollars.
Good Lord! Let's find out what it's for.
I didn't violate a single law. My company followed every rule, but the state felt I wasn't complying with the spirit or the intent of the regulations. What they wanted was access to my customer records.
What?
But I stood my ground, and I made it clear that I would spend every last penny I had protecting the privacy and rights of my customers. They didn't care about the letter of the law. They cared about control. And they used their...
All this government oversight, it's all about control. Every last bit of it is about control. And you've got to see the one by Lauren fix. Because you know what? This sort of thing, it ties hand in hand.
Infinite budget to try and crush me civilly. This is what will happen to those kit companies. The state will sue them into oblivion until they stop shipping to you. This bill won't be the last. And if it doesn't pass this session, they will try again next session. And what comes next? That's called a cleanup bill. If this bill passes, it is all but certain that it will be followed by additional legislation. Bills that make any or all existing 3D printers or 3D printing kits illegal if they don't connect and comply with their spyware. The costs will be enormous for these companies, and they will almost certainly be forced to implement these privacy and freedom invading systems. But they won't be just for Washington. They will be forced on the entire country likely, and maybe even the world. And then don't get me started on filament. All they have to do is declare PLA or PTG bad for the environment, label it single-use plastic, and they can crush the entire industry with regulatory pressure overnight.
Great. There he is giving them ideas. Oh, PLA and PETG, that's it. We're going to get rid of it. Therefore, printers are now banned. I mean, imagine that. They did that with plastic bags, and we're stuck with what? Plastic friggin' bags. Those, what are they? The fabric or cloth? They're plastic. They're woven plastic. Nothing's changed. The only difference is it went from a plastic bag you use to pick up your dog crap and throw it in the garbage to buying bags for picking up dog crap to throw in the garbage, and then buying cloth bags that are woven plastic for carrying your groceries. Even though you used to get these bags basically included in the cost of your groceries, now you have to pay on top of the exorbitant price of groceries. It's this whole world is just getting absolutely ridiculous compared to what I grew up with, when I'm sure a lot of you grew up with. It's nuts. I really do feel for the next generation, because they're going to be living with a whole lot of way too much government oversight, way too much government. We've been trying to get rid of extra government for years, trying to cut down on it. And here we are. We're adding more and more and more layers of government. Awesome.
They don't need to ban the printers if they just ban the fuel. I know, everyone thought that my dystopian 3D printer banning idea was too far-fetched. Well, here it is. We are watching an industry being suffocated by people who do not understand it. But we are not powerless. These proposed laws don't make sense because they are written by people who fear what we can create.
This actually is interesting, because they did the same thing with RC drones. They added all these stupid laws. There's a guy on here, XJet. I'll pop him up right here. And he also has been fighting all these ridiculous draconian anti-drone laws. They're basically taking all these great hobbies that people have and destroying them. That's why this whole sub 250 gram market for drones appeared overnight. Because they said, oh, if it's 250 grams or more, well, now it needs to have a license. But if it's 249 grams or less, including the battery, you don't need a license. So all these sub 250 drones suddenly appeared overnight. This is the same kind of idea that's going to happen.
We need to change that narrative. We need to educate the public. We need to show them that 3D printing is about innovation, it's about repair, and it's about creativity, not just scary ghost guns. Now, I want you to respectfully contact your representatives. I'll have that information in the description below, but do not be a troll, right? Be a creator, be a uniter. Share your stories. Tell them how these laws crush creative freedom. Tell them how they violate your right to expression. The question is this: will the 3D printing companies just give up, or will they fight for us?
We'll see.
I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. And also, YouTube wants you to go watch this one.
All right, guys. Well, that's all I've got on this video here. Let me know down below, what do you think? Do you think that this law is a little bit overstepping the bounds? And do you think it's going to help? Or do you think it's going to hinder our trying to get this whole right to repair passed? Because honestly, that's what we want. We want the right to be able to repair our stuff. We bought it. It's ours. It should be ours. It should not be this whole, you will own nothing and you will be happy. This is on the brink of just pure outright total control over the population. Let people have their hobbies. This is insane. And if we want to make something because Either it's one, too expensive, or two, unobtainium. Why can't we make this stuff? The average person isn't going to make a gun. Like, do people think about making guns with 3D printers? Absolutely, I'm sure of it. Me personally, I didn't even think about that whole idea. Sure, you can make a decent facsimile of a gun, but is it a gun? No. The more you make it a firearm, the less it is a 3D printed item, and the more it becomes a firearm. It's that simple. The more items you need to make it a firearm, the less it's a 3D print. Because let's face it, you need the firing pin and you need the barrel. Those are really important. And you also need the chamber. If you don't have the chamber, it can't contain the gases. And if you have a plastic chamber, well, that plastic, if it's printed, it's very porous. It's made out of layers, so it can blow apart one way or another. Doesn't matter how you print it. It's very weak as far as it's built by layers. Anyway, guys, leave a comment down below what you think. Let me know, is this a little bit too much government overstep, or is this not enough? Do you agree with the 3D printer firearm ban, or do you think it's going to be a slippery slope and lead to many more things down the road? All right, guys, well, please give it a thumbs up. Also, if this isn't your first time, hopefully I've earned your subscription. It would be really nice. Hit the subscribe button below. And next reaction, I'm going to show you that Lauren Fix video. It's going to be interesting. Anyway, guys, I'll see you in the next one.